Hello and welcome to the show. When it comes to cars, the Dodge Viper will always be rather special to me. You see, growing up in England, you will hear, you will see, and you will learn much about Lotus, Aston Martin, Lamborghini, Porsche, Ferrari, and so on. But when it comes to American cars, not so much. You tend not to particularly hear about them. You do not see very many on the road whatsoever. Much more likely to see a Ferrari than the likes of a Viper or a Corvette, especially more than a classic muscle car. And even while, they would appear in some games that I would have played as a kid, not recognizing the cars or knowing the cars, I would never have paid a huge amount of attention to them. But that all changed when I saw a Viper for the first time. Not dissimilar to the one that we have here. It was a blue Viper with white stripes. I can remember exactly where I saw it, where it went. I can't remember anything else about that day, but I remember seeing a Viper. And it was seeing this crazy beast of a car, hearing the incredible rumble from the engine that got me interested in American cars. It made me want to find out more about them, drive them in games, and so on. So yeah, my love for American cars can directly come back to a single Dodge Viper. I am very glad that on that day I happened to see that, because these are incredible cars. Yes, the early Vipers were not what you would call refined in any way, shape or form. They often had a huge amount of grip because of the massive tyres, although if you overstep that mark, they then may well try to murder you. The engine from the early ones certainly was pretty much a truck engine with a little bit of refinements on it. Now they have got more technically advanced as time has gone on, and the earliest kind of one that we have to play around with on Forza 7 is this ACR version, which is a little bit tamer. I'd love to see the really early Vipers on a Forza game at some point, and they could be very good, terrifying fun to drive. I mean, even this ACR one still has its moments, certainly, when you come to a circuit like Maple Valley, a big, fast, flowing circuit with a lot of crests and a lot of bumps to catch out the unsophisticated. Now, fast forward a few years and to the next generation of ACR Viper. No longer was it this slightly monstrous super muscle car, instead replaced by essentially a track weapon. There will be those, there will still be those today even, that will argue that American cars can't go around corners, and those people are morons, because the ACR Viper can go around corners very, very well indeed. In fact, I've often said this is one of the best handling cars I have ever driven. It is an example I would often hold up as how I want cars to drive, because the Viper is glued, literally glued to the road. The back end will not move around unless you are an utter moron with the car. You have to be deliberately trying to get it to slide about, often with handbrake assistance, if you want the back of the car to move, because it doesn't want to. The Viper doesn't want to be wiggling around through corners and doing silly sideways stuff. It wants to be carrying as much speed as possible and getting out the other side as quick as possible. All 600 horsepower and even more torque going through those rear wheels do not want to be wasted on spinning the wheels. Yes, it is helped by the car having relatively long gear ratios, but it really doesn't like spinning the wheels. It really doesn't like wasting any time around the circuits, and when you put it all together, you get a incredibly capable track car. And all of that very, very cheap. Often people will say the Nissan GT-R is one of the best value for money supercar killers, if you like. Truth be told, the Viper is even better. The Viper was inexpensive, around 100,000 credits, and could absolutely annihilate Ferraris and Lamborghinis when it came to a circuit. The Nissan might be slightly faster accelerating, all-wheel drive traction and everything, but when it came to lap time, the Viper is what you wanted. It is just a masterclass in terms of circuit racing. Absolutely phenomenal vehicle. And yeah, showed a lot of doubters that American cars can certainly go around corners. And now there is a new one. On the face of things, maybe not much has changed, except for the wing has got even massiver Yeah, it is a truly mighty wing we find on the back of the new ACR Viper. The front splitter and kind of end plates are fairly similar in terms of the craziness we saw on the previous car. In terms of engines, it's still sticking with that 8-litre V10. 640 horsepower from the, or 645 I should say. Yeah, 45 horsepower more than the previous generation. Truth be told, in this current crazy horsepower war that we have going on, the Viper may even look a little bit underpowered compared to some of the vehicles around it. Certainly when you start looking up at the higher end Ferraris and Lamborghinis, it's not the most powerful car out there anymore. And in terms of statistics, it perhaps isn't the most impressive when we look at the straight line speed stuff. 0 to 60, 3.5 seconds. Top speed will go on to 175, and while that's hardly slow, there are also alarmingly similar figures to the BMW i8 that we had out last time. The i8 that was too expensive and too slow around a circuit. So on paper, perhaps you would look at the Viper and think, well, that's not exactly great. But the thing is, the top speed is hindered by one big important factor, that massive wing. You see, the ACR produces incredible levels of downforce, and the downside of that is, well, drag, and that makes your car slow in a straight line. But when it comes to the corners, once more, this Viper is almost perfect. Again, it is a car that is stuck. It's just stuck to the road through almost every corner. You can be an absolute moron with the car and it will still have the brakes, it'll still have the grip for you to get away with it. Okay, yeah, you approach a hairpin at 180 miles an hour and you expect it to get around that, you're going to go and find a wall. But if you miss your braking point by, let's say, 25 meters, maybe you'll miss the apex of the corner, but the car is still going to get stopped before you smack the Armco barrier. Unlike the Zenvo that I talked about at the start of the week, the Zenvo being a terrifyingly difficult knife-edge car to drive, in which it was very difficult to get confidence with, the Viper is the complete opposite. You can throw this car around a circuit, it'll have grip, more grip, more grip, and it'll stay stuck to the circuit until it starts understeer a little bit wide, and that's when you know you've started to ask a little too much of the Viper. But the levels of grip before you've figured out you're asking too much of the car are absurd. It is so fast through the corners that the fact that it's not massively quick in a straight line is almost irrelevant. And it is so easy to drive this car fast, and you keep wanting to take laps of circuits to get the Viper to go quicker and quicker. I was certainly very curious to see how this car would do around the Yas Marina circuit. At the launch, it was actually a little bit more wheel spinny off the line. That's definitely an official measurement. Considering it hasn't got as crazy a power as the likes of the Lycan and the Zenvo and so on, it did struggle a little bit to get off the line. Of course, once it has got some traction, it's going to be a fast accelerating car. Not up where the 900,000 horsepower vehicles, but yeah, going to be a relatively fast accelerating car, but it's not about the straight line speed. Really, the speed it can carry, for example, through these two right-handers is almost flat out in the Viper. Had a small lift for the second part of that, but no other car was getting close to the levels of speed the Viper could get through. And we've seen the likes of the Lotus Evora and BMW last time going sideways through that section. The Viper's not going to do that. The Viper is stuck to the road, and again up towards this final corner, no problems whatsoever with the back end stepping out. As I mentioned, brakes very good. You can brake later with this car than most of the other vehicles that have gone around, and then it is just the run towards the finish line for the Dodge. And that was a lap around the track. It did have a couple of issues with the curbs around turn 1 on a couple of sort of warm-up laps. Actually hit them quite hard and got up into two wheels that we haven't seen from other vehicles before. You got to see there with it getting sideways. But that was about the only kind of criticism of the car in terms of the handling that I could come up with. And the lap speed is certainly good. It's a 1 minute 6.2 from the Dodge. It is a second faster than the Lotus 311. A second quicker than the Lotus around a circuit. Yeah, the Viper has a lot more power than the Lotus, but the Lotus is an awful lot lighter. I mean, it's some 3 seconds faster, in fact, over 3.5 seconds faster than the Aston Martin GT12. It is incredible. It really is. It doesn't beat the Lycan or the Zenvo or the GTA Spano. The Spano will remain at the top of the table, while I think actual corner apex speed, the Viper is faster than all three of them. Their sheer brute power when it comes to some of the acceleration zones, and certainly that final run to the line, is where those vehicles are going to make up time. I mean, it's 300 horsepower down on the GTA Spano, 400 down on the Zenvo, and while it is better than them through the corners, yeah, it will lose out slightly to them down the straights. There are, you know, let's face it, many very exciting track-focused cars that are brilliant to drive, you know, exciting to look at, make a great noise, and even some of them are relatively forgiving cars, like this Porsche 911 Gt3 RS that I took around Virginia for a few laps. This Porsche is, you know, a very, very good car. It is a very capable car. It is a fun vehicle to go around a circuit. But around this almost 2-minute lap, it was 2 seconds slower than the ACR Viper. 2 seconds a lap slower than the Viper that is probably cheaper than it. It is difficult to judge price on Forza 7 with a lot of cars, so yeah, in terms of price, it's tougher to judge than previous games, but as a supercar killer goes, as a value for money vehicle goes, the Viper is incredible. Around a track like Virginia here with a lot of these high-speed corners, the grip you get from this car, the confidence you get from this vehicle is incredible. There is very little out there that can rival it in terms of drivability, simply making a lap of a circuit quite quickly is very easy in a Viper. Of course, to go very, very fast is never easy in anything, but to drive sort of clean laps with this car is a testament to just how good it is. Of course, let's not forget here, this is not a hypercar. It is not going to lap a circuit faster than a McLaren P1, but it's going to cost you a fifth, a tenth of the price of a McLaren P1. It is an absolutely outstanding track car. And trying to find flaws with it is rather difficult. I'll be honest, there is very little, if anything, wrong with the car. Maybe you won't be a fan of the way it looks. I mean, that's going to come down to personal taste. It might not be the prettiest of cars ever. It's, let's face it, at the end of the day, looks the way it does because it's designed for a purpose. It is designed for downforce. Yeah, the wing is massive, the front splitter and so on might not have the car looking, it is nice as the standard model in some ways, but they're there for a purpose and they are there to make the car better through the corners, and bloody hell does it work. There are not enough adjectives to describe just how good the ACR Viper is when it comes to a circuit. I guess the only real downside is that, yeah, with all of the downforce on the vehicle and so on, it is perhaps not the fastest in a straight line. There will still be those badge snobs that will turn their nose up at the thought of a Dodge Viper instead of a Lamborghini or a Ferrari, and perhaps that'll always be the case. At least it'll probably be the case until they see just how easily the Viper will go past their various marquee supercars.